Hey everybody, welcome to our gathering. I'm so glad you're here. And I don't know about you, but I'm feeling a little bit of whiplash. It's been a crazy couple of months, but at some point, we have to just start dreaming again, don't you think? It's this thing that we do, not when we're asleep, but when we're fully awake. And we say, what is it that we want? Why do we want it? What are we going to do about it? This is going to be an evening with some friends. It's going to be some conversations with some beautiful friends that have helped me along the way. Don Miller is going to be our first friend that you'll talk to. And Don has been a guy that's been tracking with me for a decade or more. We've been good friends. We met a long time ago, and I've watched the arc of his life as he's moved forward from one ambition to another ambition and another. Oh, Jeremy Camp and 80, his wife, are going to join us as well, play some music, but also talk about their ambitions. A movie that they made, some things that have happened along the way. You are going to dig this. My friend Grace, you're going to love this girl. She had some ambitions, and instead of just thinking about it, she set it loose. I hope what you'll do is lean in with me and to just say, what dreams have I had? What are some of the nudges that God has had for me for years and years? And where's an opportunity that I could have to give those a little push, to push out into deeper water? I'm mindful of Jesus. Do you know there's 37 miracles that were in the Bible? And you know what the 38th miracle is? You. Do you know what the fifth miracle? Jesus is walking down the beach and he finds a boat and he sees a couple guys fishing. You know how the story goes. He gets in this boat and he pushes off from shore. It was the first boat jacking. And the thing he said to the guys he met is push out a little deeper. And you know what? They thought it was a stupid idea, but they did it anyway. I'm telling you, you've got a couple dreams that'll require you to push a little deeper. It might even seem a little stupid. Do it anyway. Welcome, you guys. I hope that you'll enjoy this time. And again, I hope that this will nudge you towards your dream. Here's a conversation I'm having with Don Miller about some of his dreams and ambitions.
Bob, congratulations on Dream Big.
Hey, thanks a million. I'm glad to have the book out and really hope some people enjoy it.
You've been working on this book while you were writing other books. There were other books coming out while you were writing this book years ago.
Is that right? Crazy? Yeah, you kind of have an ambition in it. Some people do one thing at a time, and sometimes people do many things in order. And so what I just do is many things in order. And so while I'm spinning up the one thing, my mind is going, I think you do the same thing, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to me about why it's important for people to dream big. What gets lost if they don't dream big, or if they don't dream at all? What happens in a life?
Yeah, a couple things have happened. I think a lot of people's dreams kind of got squished. They had all these outside circumstances and they got off the scent. They had this ambition deep inside of them for the longest time, and then somebody named Billy said no. Like, they applied for the job, Billy said no, and then I just can't stand it when they say God closed the door. I'm like, Billy said no. That's the only thing that happened. And so what I want us to do also is dream kind of unreasonably. I think what we sometimes do is we pick a dream that's achievable because we don't want to look bad to somebody who might be watching or look bad to ourselves. And so we pick these kind of slim price dreams. And I want to say, what's your big ambition? And I don't want to say cure cancer because it would be beautiful and altruistic, but I want to say, what's an ambition that you've had for a really long time? What's the biggest version of that? And then let's go for it. I want to fail trying. I don't want to fail watching anymore.
Yeah, I've always thought that too, that it's not important to reach your goal, but it's just important to never stop trying. That's where the meaning happens and the joy happens. It all happens in the journey. You've now helped probably thousands of people dream big through these Dream Big workshops that you've had all over the world, including Afghanistan. And, what have you learned as you've watched people try to dream big? How has it changed the way you've dreamed? I mean, you're talking about, hey, it should be realistic instead of this crazy, I'm going to cure cancer sort of thing. What other lessons have you learned in helping so many people?
There's one, I think it was among the first Dream Big gatherings that we had, And there was a woman that stood up, because we have each person say what their ambition was. Her ambition was she wanted to learn how to dance. Isn't that beautiful? It wasn't this way, build a dam and feed millions of people that are hungry, which would be beautiful ambitions as well. But she had actually had something terribly wrong happen to her foot, and she'd gone through many, many surgeries, and they just hadn't worked. And so in the months leading up to this gathering, she had her foot cut off. She said, I am going to learn how to dance. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get after this big, bold ambition. And so I think for each of us, it'll be different. But part of it is just getting rid of some of the reasons, the impediments that are in the way. Because you can have a great ambition, but then you have a bunch of impediments. Now, they might be real. They might just be perceived. I just want to test it a little bit and say, which is that an actual impediment? I'm not going to be an astronaut unless I buy SpaceX, which I'm thinking about. But it ain't going to happen. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, what are the things that are possible, and can I move in that direction? And it isn't one big leap. It's a bunch of shuffling your feet forward, little at a time.
A lot of times, dreaming smaller is akin, or at least it feels akin to safety and security. And you get into these big dreams and you kind of go, wow, have we bitten off more than we can chew? Let me give you an example. You know my dreams. Betsy and I wanted to build this 15-acre compound. We built a house. There's a guest house. There's an event space. It's a massive, probably 7-year project by the time it'll all be done. We're halfway through. We just moved into the main house. We're sitting on the back porch and we're thinking, what have we got ourselves into? This is absolutely, it's all red carpet. We're not having any problems, but it's just a big vision, and you get into the middle of it. How did you decide to be the kind of person who just goes big? I mean, who just says, I don't want to live in safety and security and in the safety of the numbers of the crowd. I want to actually pursue my ambition, even though it feels scary because nobody else is really doing this. How'd you decide to be the kind of person who's going to do it anyway?
I think one of the things that happened when I was growing up, maybe you experienced the same thing, is the really safe ambitions I had, I achieved. One of my biggest ambitions was to get Sweet Maria to go out on a date with me. I was in law school. I remember sitting in my Volkswagen, pounding on the steering wheel, thinking I could just get her, if she would like me half as much as I liked her, then I'd be set, because I liked her enough for both of us. And so my ambition was bigger than my intelligence, good looks, like everything. She was out of reach. But one of the things I did is I stayed after it, but not in a creepy way. When she said no to me, often, I would just be respectful. And so I want us to just pick an ambition and don't think of it as binary. You either get it or you don't. Maybe what happens is it comes over time, but it doesn't mean you bail on the ambition. It means that you flex with that. You continue on with the other opportunities that are there and inch those forward as you still have in mind why you had this big dream. Because I wanted to do life with her in the biggest way, and she didn't want to even do an evening with me. But what I did is I kept that as my ambition and just pursued it in a non-creepy way.
Yeah. What do you do when that sort of thing doesn't work out? There are people who are watching us talk and they're saying, we couldn't have children, or our child passed away, or my spouse passed away, and they feel like their ambition was crushed. And you've had a ton of those people come through the workshops. They tend to. And I'm wondering, what's your counsel to them?
Yeah, I think probably I've learned most of the tips I know about writing have come from you. And I'm not just blowing sunshine at you, but one of the things that I've learned is that the best titles come later. And so the best book titles come later, the best chapter titles come later. And so instead of trying to figure out right now, what does all this mean, but to just be patient, which is really hard for me. I mean, I make coffee nervous. I'm like so amped all the time. But to just, in the middle of heartbreak, in the middle of a really big setback, to just pause before you try to caption that. We had a home burned down. It took 20 years to build. It took 20 minutes to burn down. And so what we did is, instead of feeling like that was a message from God, I think it was just some people that made a mistake and the home burned down. And so I spent the next 4.5 years rebuilding it. And so what would cause somebody to spend a quarter of a century building and then rebuilding the same thing? And I think what it gets down to is having a big ambition, going after it, knowing why that's your big ambition, and not letting the circumstances get in the way, not denying that it happened. I mean, there was a lot of smoke and ashes, but what there was is a lot of ambition to start again. And so for the person that has suffered some setbacks, whether it was in a relationship, I would say try again. For the person that had a career and it felt like that burned down, I would say try again. But don't bail on your dreams. I would say just get busy on them. Reflect, certainly. Go a mile deep. Say, are there lessons to be learned here? Have I changed as we're a new creation? Who's new Bob? And it turns out new Bob was kind of like old Bob. He still wanted a lodge. So we just rebuilt it. The whole Goff team. We just jumped in. We didn't put a toe on the water. We did a cannonball.
I love that. You're a man of faith. I'm a man of faith. Tell me about your relationship with God and what part he plays in you dreaming big and trying to accomplish something huge. How do you partner with him, or what does that look like? Is it true that there's a calling in life? How do you partner with God in dreaming big the way you do?
Yeah, the faith is a big deal for me, but mine feels like a very kind of steak and potatoes faith, except for our vegan friends. Like it doesn't feel mystical. It doesn't feel like he drops ladybugs on my nose I think he could drop a piano on me if he wanted to get my attention. And so what he does, in my experience, is he drops people in our path. And so one of the things that you can't overlook is the people, the opportunities he's already dropped in your path to learn from. Remember our earliest conversations. Like you said, I think you have a book in you. And I'm like, I can barely spell cat. I mean, I don't have a book in me. But you actually believed in me more than I believed in me. You weren't trying to manipulate me. You were just trying to be helpful. And if I waved off, you'd be like, awesome. But I saw God dropping somebody in my path that actually had a lot of wisdom and was actually good at that. And so the first thing I would do is to say, if faith is important to you, who has God already dropped in your path? Somebody that could say, I see something in you that you don't see in you. Kind of like Jesus to Peter, calling him a rock when he just said, I don't even know the guy. And so sometimes calling out a person that calls out this dream, and it resonates because you realize, I'd really like to do that. But you just need somebody, and you weren't a cheerleader, you were just my friend. You just said, I really think you have it. And then this is what friends do. They make your words better. All the words I've written, you made them better. And so
I don't know about that.
One of the things that will happen is find somebody who's dropped in your path, somebody that could help you with your ambition, and then don't be shy about it. Don't be a pest about it, but be persistent. And there's a fine line in there between being persistent and being a pest. But you'll know, and your friends will let you know which side of that line you're on.
Bob, this question will kind of come out of left field, but if the book, Dream Big, started a movement outside of your control, it just started a movement, what would that movement be known for? What would the characteristics that you would hope that movement would have, what would they be? Oh,
people that aren't looking at what everybody else is looking at. Like that idea Maria told me a long time ago, to keep your eyes on your own paper. Remember in elementary school they would say that? But if we could just tend to our own fire, dreaming big would mean that we're not the average of everybody else's dreams, but that we're like the sum of all of our ambitions. And so I think what we tend to do is average things out, because I'm surrounded by really smart people all the time. And I think, well, if they're not thinking that, maybe I shouldn't be thinking that. Or if they're not going to Afghanistan, be like, I don't know, maybe this is kind of nuts. I read a State Department warning. But what I also do is God drops a person. And there's a man that God dropped into our life in Afghanistan. And I said, well, can we come over? And he said, yes. And I said, what if we get 170 Afghan leaders together and talk about what their dreams and ambitions are? We'll meet in Kabul. And so 170 people showed up. And so that's the idea. God drops a person. You talk to the person and say, what's your ambition? What is it that you want to do? And they ask you, what is it that you want to do? And because you're polite, you're not trying to average out your ambitions, but you're trying to engage them. And you engage them with action, and you send the letter, you write the text, you make the call. You don't just use it like brain candy. Wouldn't it be swell to go across the Pacific someday? Buy the boat. If you can't buy a good boat, buy a junker. Get the sails later.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, the book is called Dream Big, and it's available now? We're talking?
It is available right this second. And I hope people, when they read the pages, they won't see my stories, the best stories from any of the books that you've written. What I didn't see is you sitting in your Volkswagen bus. I saw me sitting in my Volkswagen bus. And so hopefully the book tees up a story so that people can see their story in it. And they can say that this is how that applies to me. It wasn't my coach who said something nice. It was somebody who was really kind to you. And so I really hope that when you read the pages, if this is for you, that you'll kind of find your ambition again. You know, if you lose your keys, what you do is you say, where was the last place I saw them? I'm constantly doing that. How many times, Don, have you looked for your phone while you're on the phone? So when I lose my keys, I say, where was the last place I saw them? And sure enough, if I follow that trail of breadcrumbs back, I'll find my keys. And I hope people will do that with their ambitions. Say, where was the last time I pursued my ambition? What was that ambition? And I hope you'll just take the next steps forward. As you shuffle your feet forward, I think heaven is leaning over the rails, just waiting to see who you turn into.
Well, Bob, thank you for writing another book and helping us dream big. Thank you for helping me dream big so many years ago. I'm so glad that the whole world has access to this idea and this inspiration now. All the best to you on this book.
Thanks a million, Don, and congratulations on moving into Goose Hill.
Can't wait to have you here. Your bedroom's ready.
Come on.
I love this topic of dreaming big. It's one of my favorite ideas to think about in terms of realizing that life itself is a blank canvas, that we can do pretty much anything we want within reason with that life, and we can almost all do more than we ever dreamed possible. The question that I always get when people ask me or they start dreaming big with me is, what should I dream about? What should I do with my life? And that's a tough thing to figure out. And there's really three places that I think have helped me figure out what to dream big about. And the first place is what are my core values, and is my dream coming out of my values? And so I'll talk in a second about how to create those values. The second thing is really what is the most challenging thing that I could possibly accomplish given how I'm wired. I'm not going to be in the NFL as a quarterback, but I'm an executive, and so I could probably do some big things as an executive. So that's a big part of it too. And then the third part, and this gets more and more important as you get older, really, is what's the big dream that I have that would most dramatically affect other people? So, what are my core values? What's the biggest thing I could accomplish within those core values? And then the Venn diagram would also overlap on this idea of how is this positively going to affect the world? And I think the trifecta of those three ideas are really what we want to start dreaming about. And so the core values thing, somebody, I can't even remember who, I wish I could credit them, but somebody else taught me this a long time ago. They said the way you decide what your core values are is you don't actually just sit down and go, okay, well, these are the values I like, because usually we're off on those. But they actually taught me to say, Don, what is it that really makes you angry? I mean, what do you have a visceral reaction to? What makes you angry? And I think some of the things that make me angry are when underdogs or innocent people are attacked or beaten up or belittled. I lose it. I really just do. Even animals, like if somebody hits a dog or something, I can't deal with it. I just get so angry. And so when I look at what that anger is about, then you say, okay, what if the things that we are angry about are actually because something is stepping on our values? And so what values would come from the underdog being belittled or an innocent dog being kicked or something like that? What values are being stepped on? And I think it's the innocent or the weak being taken advantage of by the powerful. That would be one of my values, is to help people who are in weakness or who are being left behind share an equality of power and impact. And so I know that if I'm going to dream about something, it's going to be from that value, to help people who are being marginalized actually not just get a charitable piece at the table, but a rightfully deserved piece of the table, a place to say, this is what I want in life. And so any sort of totalitarianism or dictatorships, I don't like those things. I like more democratic ideas. And so that would be one of the things that I would dream about, is how can I create a world where more of that happens? Then there's the second question of, okay, within that value, what would be the most ambitious challenge possible within that value of mine? And yours may be beauty, the creation of beauty, or all sorts of other things. So you might be a musician or a painter. Your values may be family. Your values may, who knows what they are? Generosity. Whatever that is, you would want to sit and daydream for a day about what is the most ambitious thing that I could possibly accomplish given that value. Where is that value most represented in the world? And so you would say, as a songwriter, well, maybe if you're a pop songwriter or something, it would be to have a number one hit song. And I don't think that's crazy to dream about. It may be incredibly unrealistic to happen. But I would imagine if you sit down with every person who's ever written a number one pop song, they would say, yeah, it was incredibly unrealistic that would ever happen. That's just the way that is. And so, but I would begin to dream about those things. And there's a way that you can dream about those things kind of without getting your hopes up. You kind of like dream about it and want it, but you also hold it lightly so that you're not demanding it. And if it's taken from you, you can pivot very quickly. But what that dream is it's a direction with which you can move in your life, because we all need that direction in order to experience a deep sense of meaning. We need to be heading somewhere. So we take that core value and then we say, okay, if that core value were embodied in me and given passion and backed up with work, I could become what? I could accomplish what? And now we're beginning to really channel in that dream. And then there's a third, and the third really is a check on the first two. Because if you have this incredible ambition and you want to write a number one pop song, and you want to do that because there's a wound in your heart and you love to hear people clap, you're heading toward a life of complete misery. I'm convinced of it. Because I don't know anybody who's had that happen who didn't need more people to clap. And then eventually you just get old and you lose your hair and nobody wants to put you on TV anymore and nobody's clapping anymore and you're just the most miserable person in the world. Because what that is, it's sort of ambition gluttony. The way you stop that sort of gluttonous ambition from taking over your life is you actually bring in the check on it. And the check on it is, how does this serve the world? How does this help me get outside of myself and help other people? I mean, the idea is not just that you would accomplish something great. The idea is that you would accomplish something great as a way of dying to yourself. Just last night, I watched a movie that I tend to watch every 5 or 10 years, the movie Gandhi. Won a bunch of Academy Awards, and it's the story of Mohandas becoming Mahatma Gandhi, and him standing up first to the British in South Africa and helping start that movement to free South Africa, which of course wouldn't happen until later. But then he goes to India and he starts the movement to free India from British rule. And then as he's freeing India from British rule, or playing a principal role in that, he realizes as soon as the British are gone, the Hindus and the Muslims are going to enter into a civil war. There's going to be chaos and there's going to be a lot of blood on the streets. Pakistan and India will become two separate nation states. And that's exactly what happens. They begin to kill each other. as the British move out. And so Mahatma Gandhi, he lays down on a bed and he says, I am not going to eat any food. And because you're doing this, you're going to just watch me die. And that's what he does. He lays down and he doesn't eat any food. And he's convinced that he's going to die. And they come to him and say, look, we've made all this progress. Please, you can eat now. We've signed peace accords. And he says, no, there's still people. If one Muslim is trying to hurt one Hindu, you're going to watch me die. This is crazy. This man is absolutely crazy. And they do it. The entire country, and every imam, every temple, the religious leaders stand up and they say, I will die before I hurt a Muslim. I will die before I hurt a Hindu. Because this is what Mahatma Gandhi wants us to do. Every single one of them in India does this. And there's no more violence. Nobody's hurting anybody. And so Gandhi eats some chicken broth and he comes back. And later he's assassinated when he visits Pakistan. In order to show that a Hindu can walk into Pakistan and be safe, and he's assassinated there. That's ambition. That ambition hits the third check on, and here's the check. Is this ambition a way of proving my identity to myself? Or is this ambition a way of accomplishing something really great and me willing to die for others? And that's the ambition I think that we don't regret. I think that's the ambition that we don't regret. And so to me, those are the three factors, the Venn diagram, and they overlap in the middle, and you just go, okay, I want to choose my ambition out of my core values, out of the most challenging ambition I can think of that those core values could be manifested in, and this idea that it is sacrificial for the sake of others. To me, that's where the three meet, and I think that's where we find a fulfilling ambition. And I think we have to. I think that's the inner work we have to do, and it takes a little while. And the reason we have to do it is because there's one thing that you take with you into your grave. I'm convinced of it, and that's regret. You can't take your possessions. You can't take any. You take your regret. You die saying, I wish I would have X. I wish I wouldn't have been afraid. I wish I wouldn't have lacked inspiration or motivation. I wish I would have worked a little harder toward. I wish I would have been closer to my family. I wish I wouldn't have neglected my children. I wish I wouldn't. It's the regret. And so we know, and I'll warn you, once you create that Venn diagram and you pick that thing to dream big about, that thing right in the middle, that will create regret if you don't go for it. So beware, because it will haunt you until you go for it. But that's what life is about. It's about going for it. It's not about achieving it. It's about going for it. A hero in a movie is still a hero if he dies trying. Doesn't have to defeat the enemy, just has to die trying. Like Mahatma Gandhi did not bring down violence in India. It's still there today between Pakistan and India, Muslims and Hindus. But he died trying, and that's why we talk about him today. And maybe someday we will talk about you. Dream big.
Hey, I hope you're taking some notes. Don's got some things to say. He's been speaking loudly into my life for a long time. Another person that's going to speak into your life as well as mine is Grace. She doesn't require an introduction. She is aptly named, filled with grace and love. She's a woman who knows what she wants. She knows why she wants it, and she's going to do something about it. Listen in as Grace and I talk about some of her ambitions and what she did next. Hey, Grace, thanks so much for joining. We're doing a celebration, and you're like one of my favorite people to celebrate.
Yay, I'm so excited to be part of this. So excited.
I remember it was a while ago, and you had this big, beautiful ambition. Tell us a little bit about it.
Absolutely. Well, I remember coming to Dream Big Framework with the goal that I wanted to be a philanthropist, ultimately by trying to be a realtor and then taking the money to be able to give it away. And I remember being in the session on the second day, and in the middle of it, you said in front of everybody, Grace, you have something to say. People need to hear your voice. And I remember thinking, no! See, the backstory was I knew that was my calling. I knew that was my purpose, but I was running away from it because I wanted to be married. I know it makes no sense whatsoever, but at the point I was a pastor and I would speak on stage sometimes, and I felt that when I went on dates and people always ask you, what do? You could see the lights kind of dim when they would find out that I was a pastor, and people would be like, out of here, and so I thought, I'm going to approach things a different way. I had a passion for real estate because I had bought my home and realized that after living in it for just a couple years, it had appreciated so much in California real estate. So I thought, I'm going to become an investor and go on dates and say, I'm an investor. So that was my plan when I came to the Dream Big framework. But sometimes we need somebody to call us out, which is exactly what you did. And I knew that was what I've been called to do, to write and speak and bring hope and encouragement to people. And so that's what I continued to pursue. After you called me out, I was like, I'm not exiting this plan. So
sometimes it happens a little bit at a time. You have an ambition and it's been stirring around in you, and then there'll be an ambition that's adjacent to the one that you have. And so for, I think, a lot of people listening, they might have an ambition and they feel like they've kind of gone as far as they can. I would say to do what you did, just look at, are there adjacent ambitions, and can I get any opportunity there? And you need to make it known what you want. And I love that. That's that idea. If you want a chocolate cake, let people know, I want a chocolate cake. One of the things that you made known is that you wanted to end up speaking more, perfecting that. What happened next once you made it known?
Well, you invited me to speak with you at an event you were doing later that week. And what is the funniest thing is I don't think anybody's actually ever told you this when you've invited them. I think I told you I'll think about it because that weekend was my birthday and I had a bunch of things planned. But I quickly realized this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I joined you for 5 minutes and just shared a little bit about my story. And it was an incredible opportunity. I think it was the conference keynote that you were doing. So I showed up at this keynote and shared for a few minutes, and it seemed like my story resonated with people, and it brought encouragement and hope. And I remember afterwards you said, that was awesome, Grace. You said, you have an incredible story. You need to write a book. And so that was the next phase.
That's another adjacent ambition. And here's the thing about this speaking event. It was a gathering. I forget which one it was, but we didn't ask for permission. And I think there's a lot of people that are asking for permission to live into their ambition. And I don't think we need to do that anymore. I think you're here, assume you have the permission. I assumed if they wanted me to speak, they would want anybody coming with me to speak. So I remember holding hands and just walking out to the front and then getting out of the shot so you would have your sizzle reel. And I've been tracking you. You were like watching a comet shooting across the sky. One of the things that happened along the way is more than just writing this book, but you actually found somebody pretty important in your life.
Yes, I met my husband. See, what people don't realize, I was 42 at that time, and when I came to the Dream Big framework, and I really wanted to get married. That's why I was like, I got to try something different. After I hit 40, I was like, this ain't working for me. So what is so powerful is that I come to Dream Big framework and realized this is what I need to be doing. I started taking steps towards that. And while I was on that journey, Phil came and he started working with our church. And had I not been there, had I gone on another tangent, I would never have met him. And so that was something so remarkable that as we step into what we're called to do, you never know who you meet along the way that will take you to that next phase or might be an answer that you're looking for.
Yeah, the crazy part is it isn't that, well, if you're, obedient and do this, then God's going to do this and this. This is not a negotiation. This is your life. And so it isn't bigger and better and then this leads to that. But I'm just saying you have this ambition. If you're watching along with us, you have an ambition. It's been stirring around in you for 20 years. And you have this idea, what if it were possible? And then somebody calls it out of you, but don't wait for somebody to call it out of you. You can call it out of yourself.
Right.
You can just say, doggone it. You called out of yourself this ambition to say, I'm just going to be an investor. I've got a beautiful purpose. I want to help people. You're the improbable philanthropist. You want to just make some moves, but you don't have the cash. So the promise isn't that if you do this and this and this, it's all going to go great and there's a bow tied on the top. Not at all. But what'll happen is that you're going to find what you're looking for. You're going to find the opportunities. If you're looking to serve people, you're going to find opportunities to serve people. If you're looking to grow in your faith, if you're looking to grow in your community that you serve, you're going to find those opportunities. But only action can turn into love. Like it's just love, just like the feeling. It takes action. And God doesn't need our help. He needs our hearts. And I'm just so grateful for you. So tell us about the book. What's happening now on that front?
All right. So I had the opportunity to go to a conference called She Speaks, where you learn or you get exposed to agents and other people who want to speak and write. And I met my agent there. And so I started working with her, and I've been working on a book proposal and getting things ready for a publisher. And she just said the same thing you did. You have a voice, you have an incredible story, and people want to hear about it. And, one of the things you talk about is that sometimes you'll experience setbacks. So one of the setbacks I experienced is I thought the book was going to be about this. And she really challenged me and said, hey, I want you to broaden it. And it's going to be about this. So I had to start back again. But we're on an incredible track to help people and really specifically help them through how do you flourish in a winter season? Because for me, being single for so many years, that was a winter season. So
yeah, one of the things that I'm sure as people are listening, there's a large number of people that actually realize they have something to say. And I hope that you won't start with an entire book. Start with an entire word.
Yeah.
And then double it. 2 words. And then maybe you could get a sentence out of you or a paragraph. But the important part is just starting, not waiting for permission, not waiting for inspiration to strike. Just say, what's God already given you? What's available to you? What are your ambitions? What is adjacent? And then figure out why that's important to you. And the subtitle of this Dream Big book is Know What You Want, Why You Want It, and what you're going to do about it. And as I think of each of the things that have been the chord for each of your ambitions, you knew what you wanted, you knew why you wanted it, and you decided what you're going to do about it. And then you started finding things that are adjacent, including a husband.
Yeah.
One of the things that I want to think about together is what holds people back. What is it that made you say not me, that would be either be too good for me or too something, or I don't have the credentials? What holds you back? Because maybe some people listening are finding the same things holding them back.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know for me in writing, I would often think, the last time I took an English class was in high school. Like, who am I to think I can write? Another thing I often hear from people is that you've got to have a huge platform, in order to be published or to go and speak. And so that can be something that people let hold them back. In the area of real estate, one of the things I think I shared with you is I had an experience where things did not go as I wanted it to, and I really let that keep me from trying again. So I had tried to buy an investment property and submitted all of my paperwork, and everything was ready to go, and the last thing that was needed was my driver's license for the paperwork. And so I had sent that in the following day as one last piece of information, and then I heard back that all of a sudden they now needed 30% down. And so it had been a huge jump. And I was like, wait a minute. Something's fishy here. And so I talked to some of my investor friends and realized that's not always the case. And so I let that hold me and say, I'm not going to be able to invest because of how some people might conceive me. And I started thinking of all the memories from the past of having, brick thrown through our window and my dad being stopped by the police in front of our house. And so I let those things keep me from trying again. And that can be such an obstacle for people to overcome, to not let what's happened in the past call the shots and keep you from moving forward in your dream.
Yeah, bingo. So some things that have been just so fundamentally unfair, if you're listening, that happened to you, may have been Grace's experience, may have been an adjacent kind of experience, is really painful and so wrong. Yet you didn't make that setback a campsite. What you said is, I'm a really capable, go for it woman. I have lots of things to offer and I'm going to move forward. And the crazy thing is, what actually feels like a roadblock sometimes is the launching pad.
Yeah.
Like, hit this thing along the way and you say like, I wanted that so bad. That's how I felt about a date all the way through high school. I wanted one so bad, but it just never materialized. But one of the things that I realized at the end is I got Sweet Maria. Yeah. And just think of all the things that I thought were actually preventing me were actually protecting me. So to make friends, to kind of reconcile with some of the circumstances that have happened, that's not selling out on those. These are saying, I am looking towards the horizon. And that's the way I would see you. You are this adventurer. As long as we've known each other, and it's been years now, you've always been looking towards the horizon. What are the things that you're looking forward to next?
Well, one of the things, if I could just continue on the last thing that you said, is I realized one other setback that I had is we talked about me going and letting people who run conferences know that I was available to speak, and just different things that people might look for a female speaker for. And I didn't get callbacks or people saying, hey, we want you to be our keynote. But so that was kind of discouraging. But here's what happened is that as I developed relationships, things began to happen organically, where I was invited to speak at an event over here or a conference over here. And so it was through those relationships, taking one step at a time, that it just began to unfold. So just wanted to mention.
Like that idea that you, I just get so kind of wary of people saying God closed the door. And I would just shoot the hinges off. Like, you have this thing that you've wanted, that you have something to say, that you just keep spinning the house till you make the back door look like the front door. One of the things that we need to be is resilient, because there's many, many things that I've pursued that just haven't worked out. But I don't feel like God is saying no. I've written to the Pope every single year, and I've said, can we meet? And every year, one of his bishops writes back and says, absolutely not. But it just confirms for me, I've got the right address. So what we want to do is find ambitions that are going to actually outlast us. If your ambition is to be popular, that will go week to week until you're not popular anymore. And then as soon as you're not popular, then it's an identity crisis, because you said, if your ambition is to have a platform, leave that platforms to the painters. What we want to do is have a presence wherever we are, fully there.
Right.
Just like you and I, when we're talking, it's just us. It's not us and whoever else. And maybe just practicing that a little bit at a time for the people. And then keeping in mind, you could even put note cards around the house about what your many ambitions are. I've got an ambition. I want to be a really fun grandpa. So that's a terrific ambition. And I am actually grandpa now, and I'm working on the really fun part. I've got an edge because I'm really fun. But along the way, I've decided I want to learn how to fly a hot air balloon. I think it's because I watched The Wizard of Oz, and at the end he floated away, and I thought, what a great way to go. So knowing my limitations, I'm not going to fly my hot air balloon anywhere near power lines. Because that story will not end well. It will be you ending up at my wake.
Yeah.
But there's this place called Albuquerque. Evidently, they have lots of hot air balloons. Evidently, there's not a lot of power lines. What I'm saying is this: find your ambition and then start drilling down on it. Don't just say, I want to lead a happy life. Drill down and say, well, what does happy look like? Does that mean get $1 million? Does that mean give away $2 million? Does that mean get a puppy? Does that mean whatever? What are some of your longer term ambitions? What are some of the things as I look towards the future with you, as we even look at 2020, if we say, I want 2020 to be memorable for more than a virus, I want it to be memorable because of this. What's your answer?
I really want it to be memorable in bringing people together. I think that there's a lot of tension, a lot of strife, a lot of misunderstanding that's going on right now, whether it's in our country or around the world. And I would love to just be able to listen and learn and share experiences so that we can work together, so that we can be one, that we can grow together and make this world a better place for the next generation. And I really feel like that might not be something that happens in 2020, but we can take a step forward by having dialogue, by having conversations, by loving one another. And so some smaller steps towards that, working on writing my book, working on speaking and having whatever opportunity to share and encourage people along those lines. But I really have a passion to bring people together in helping us understand where we're coming from, and that differences that are sometimes used to divide people, that we can really learn and grow through them.
Yeah, in a weird way, but it resonates with our lives, that dreaming isn't done when you're asleep. It's done when you're fully awake, and you wake up to injustices and you wake up to these things. And then instead of just waking up to that, then to be a participant, not to be the hero, not to be the victim, but to be a participant, to say, what's my role in that? I have a son, who went through high school sleepwalking. He actually spent most of his days sleepwalking through high school, but he would wake up at about 2 a.m, walk downstairs and right out the front door in his boxers. And so I would wake up, I would walk outside in my boxers, and we would just stand at the side of the road. It's at least a misdemeanor. And I don't want to shake him awake because, I've read those psychology books. He'll be living with me when he's 50. So what I would do is just wait until he decided, I think it's time to go in. And I'd be like, awesome. And I think that idea of waking people up, even waking ourselves up to our ambition, we can look fully awake. He looked fully awake, but we can actually still be asleep. And so part of dreaming big is coming fully awake to not only your ambitions, but then to the ambitions of the people around you. Paul's talking to Timothy, and he talked about taking a genuine interest in the people around you. And one of the things that I've seen about you is that you don't just make it all about grace, like there'd be nothing more unfulfilling than that. But you have taken a genuine interest in people in churches and gatherings across the country. What do you have to say about that to people that are on their way towards their ambitions, about how to help other people achieve their ambitions?
One of the things that I love to do is to hear people's stories. I love to hear where they've come from, what they've been through, and then hear what their passion is. What is the thing that you wake up each day so excited to do? And how can I support in that? How can I partner in that? And I love to learn from it as well. And so I think that's one of the key things that I do, and just listening to people, hearing their heart, their dreams, and coming alongside cheering them on, and how can I support making that happen?
What if people did this? What about 3 minutes of authenticity?
Yeah.
So to say, invite a friend, go to Starbucks when they open up again, and say, make them pay. And then say, what I want to do is 3 minutes of authenticity. I'm going to tell you for the next 3 minutes what's really going on. I don't care what my life looks like. I'm going to tell you the way it is. I'm going to tell you that When I'm away from Sweet Marie, I get terribly lonely. I just hate it. I'm sitting in a hotel room and I've been praying for 8 years. I go like, God, if I could only just stay at home. And then Earth stopped spinning a couple months ago. And like heaven's like, what's your second wish? But one of the things that I experience is loneliness. I don't deal with depression. That hasn't been a common theme for me, but that feeling of being isolated when you're with many, many people and you feel like you're the only person there. Here's the rules. If you're listening, I want you to do this with a friend. The only rule is don't try to fix them. Grace, just listen. As I said, I feel lonely. Sometimes I feel isolated. I can be around a lot of people, feel like the only person there. And then turn the mic over to your friend and to just say, give me a few minutes of authenticity, and to say that I don't want you to revisit my loneliness. I don't want you to revisit my isolation until I bring it up again. We'll just know, we'll keep it, we'll go Vegas on this. We're going to keep it right here, right? So if you feel willing, tell me just a moment or two of authenticity.
I have recently just felt such despair with some of the things that have been going on that we've seen played out in the news, and particularly as it deals with African Americans. And I know this is going to be aired at a later date, but it's still very tender and raw of what we just saw with George Floyd, and just an African American man who was killed on national TV. And so for me, it's just been so hard, because I saw my brother when I saw that, I saw my nephew when I saw me, and something that's so important to me is for people to realize that each person is God's masterpiece. And just because we might look different with our features, our skin, hair, our backgrounds, but we have the same blood running through us. And there's a beautiful purpose that each person has, a dream that they have. And my heart is that we would champion that we would see the best in people. And so that's being real raw, Bob, as to where I am. I could think of another example of transparency, because I know that's not the direction of this.
No, this is beautiful. This is the direction. What I want us to do is practice this. Like what I was doing is hearing from a friend what's really going on. I'm not jumping in on top of that saying, you're right, let's go get. I'm not amending it. I'm not adding to it. And if we could practice those few minutes of authenticity together, just being silent with our friend, then the next time I'm with you, I feel like a deeper connection. Even though we've been friends for years, I know what's really, really going on. I know you're writing a book. I know that you're speaking. I know you've got a terrific husband and he's got an awesome wife, but I actually know this tenderness. And I think that's where many dreams are birthed, if we can find that safe place to do. So Grace, thank you for making a little time talking, telling us what your dreams and ambitions are, and then that few moments of authenticity. And I think that's where our best relationships and our biggest dreams are birthed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's been such an honor. I'm so excited for this book, Bob, because I know how much it impacted me walking through the process, the 7 different steps that are outlined in the book when I went through Dream Big framework. It really was a life-changing experience for me, and I believe it's going to impact so many people as they read it.
Well, thank you. Love to you from the entire Goff clan. Did I deliver when I said Grace was going to be awesome? I love that girl. I'm telling you, there's something that leads us forward. As we see our ambitions, we find things not just about us, but we find some of our greatest ambitions by taking an interest in other people, to understand their story, understand their pain. But then to work through our pain and our story in really gracious ways. And you have heard from a couple of my teachers in that respect, the people that have worked through some hard things in their lives. And so think about yourself for a second. Think about some of the things that have been difficult for you, some of the things that you've had to encounter in your life. I had a chance to sail back from Hawaii once. I got on a boat with some guys, and it was somebody else's boat, and they needed it delivered to San Francisco. So I thought, like, oh, what the heck? What could possibly go wrong? So we jumped on the boat, and I remember leaving Hawaii, and I looked back and I saw this piece of kelp trailing behind the boat. And I didn't think anything of it. We sailed 1,700 miles. I looked back, what was trailing behind the boat? The same piece of kelp. I had literally dragged that piece of kelp across the Pacific. And the thing about keels, they can be very helpful. They're the things that keep us upright. They're the things that keep us from tipping over on a sailboat, but they also attract the kelp. What happens in our lives isn't much different than that. We go through lives, we have our faith, we have our family, we have our friends. They're the keels in our life. They keep us upright. But along the way, we pick up a couple pieces of kelp. We pick up some things that have actually slowed us down. I can't think of how much difference in speed I lost because I didn't do something with the kelp I was dragging. Think of these as your limiting beliefs, the things that have kind of held you back, the things that you picked up along the way. It was a hurt, it was a wound from somebody. It might have even been a friend that you had. Something went terribly wrong and you walked away wounded, but you carried that forward into your next relationships. Something went wrong in a career. You had big hopes for this, and then it seemed like it got shut down. And I want to actually revisit some of those things. If you wanted to be a doctor, if you wanted to be a school teacher, and then you got lost along the way, I want to revisit and say, what kelp got wrapped around your keel that's slowing you down? And I think what you do is what I did. You have to round into the wind. You push the sail back against the wind, and it pushes the boat backwards, and then the kelp falls away. I think it's a time of rest, and I want you to know this: rest is holy. Get some. Some of us are running a mile a minute. We never actually stop to rest. And I think what we need to do is just catch our breath for a moment and to say, what is it that we could learn if we paused, and to say, what about those dreams? Remember the 8-year-old version of you? Have a talk with him or her. Bring them into the conversation, but don't just stop with them. I want you to talk to the version of you that's 10 years older than you. I'm 61. I'm talking to the 71-year-old version of me. You know what we're talking about? Grandkids. We talk about that a lot. And if you know who it is that you're becoming, then you start moving in that direction, slowly and confidently. But you need to do this fully aware that there's some limiting beliefs that have been baked into the pie along the way. And that might mean that you need to apologize to a couple people. It might mean that you need to make a phone call, send a text, and you need to square up a couple things. And what I hope that we'll do is we'll take the time to do that. One of the things that we were talking about before, the miracles that Jesus did, 37 of them. The 8th miracle that Jesus did, remember he met a guy with a withered hand. And remember what he said to him? Take your hand out and be healed. Now, Jesus could have healed the guy's hand in his pocket, but I love that he said, reach out your hand. And what I want you to do, if you feel like you need a little bit of healing to deal with some of those things that have happened in your past, I want you to reach out your hand. Reach it out to a friend. Find somebody really safe. Have the conversation that you haven't had yet. And that's where all the good things happen. And do it with vulnerability. I was with some friends at a class I teach at San Quentin. We were all sitting around in a circle, and the average sentence still left to be served of these men was over 100 years apiece. And so they'd had some setbacks in their lives, and we were talking about getting things off our chest. We had been in the prison yard before, and everybody's pushing these weights around. And I was telling them the thing, if I was trying to do that would be on my chest, would be the barbells. And so we went around one at a time and said, what's the thing you need to get off your chest? And the last guy paused and he said, I've been in here for 20 years and I've been telling everybody that I got framed, that I didn't do it. And he paused and he said, I did it. He got this thing off his chest. I'm telling you, he was the freest guy I've ever met. One of the things about getting after your dreams is to get a couple things off your chest, get some clarity on some of the things that have been behind you. I'm not saying stay stuck and wrapped around the axle. I'm saying if we can deal with some of these things, then we can see this bright future that God has for you ahead of you. What I want you to do is figure out those things. What's the kelp around the keel? What's the thing you need to get off your chest? And what I want you to do is to figure out the thing that's underneath the thing. In other words, like, what is it that's causing you to do the wonky things that you're doing? For me, a lot of times it's just insecurity. Isn't that crazy? You think of me as like this, like, whatever. And I'm really insecure. Tremendously so. And so I'm not looking for validation from people. I'm looking for meaning. I'm looking for purpose. I'm looking for somebody that says, I would be willing to get to know you even in your worst version of you. Like the side of you that you don't want to show. I'm super impatient, man. I make coffee nervous. I'm just like, go, 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 go. And what I'm trying to do is slow it down, because I'm learning from my wife, from some people that are around me all the time, that I'm driving them nuts. And they've been really nice about it, but they go like, if you really want the real deal, you actually could tap the brakes on that. Find a couple people. I'm not saying constructive criticism, because that always just feels like criticism. I'm saying people who will speak plainly to you, to say, I see this in you, but this is what I see coming in you. It was like Paul, a life transformed. He's a guy who knew what he wanted when he met Jesus. He knew why he wanted it, because he understood about eternity, and he decided what he was going to do about it is suffer. He was willing to do the things that a lot of us aren't willing to do. It's the kind of thing that Grace talked about, some of the setbacks she's endured. Dawn talked about it. Well, what we've done is we've talked about the things that have shaped us the most in our lives, and then say, what is it that we're going to do next? What's the next courageous move for you to move towards your ambition? One of the things I want you to do is to be introduced to some more good friends. Jeremy and AD Camp, wow, what amazing people. And they've got a story to tell about the release of their movie, about the arc of their life and what brought them together and what's keeping them together. So listen in to Jeremy and AD Camp, and they're also going to play some pretty cool music for you. AD and Jeremy, thank you so much for jumping on. It's just so good to see you guys. I wish we were within 10 feet of each other right now.
I know, exactly. We miss you.
I know.
Yes, we got into some mischief briefly a couple weeks ago, but I'm just looking forward to more. I think that's where some of the best things are happening. And no better mischief makers than you two.
Oh, thank you. Exactly.
Hey, for the four people that don't know you, tell us a little bit about how you guys met, how you arrived in the music industry. What's a day in your life?
Yeah, so, I'm from Indiana, like small town Indiana. And, at one point I was like, I feel like I need to go out to California to Bible college. So I went to Bible college, and while I was there, I always had a heart for music, but of course didn't even know where to start. A small town Indiana boy, where do you start, And so going out to California, I remember one time I was out there and I was playing, worship, and I was in a kitchen by myself. No one was there in the dining room. And the worship leader of the college came up to me and said, hey, you're pretty good. You want to lead worship at school? And I was like, I guess, I'm not sure. And so literally from that point on, the doors kind of started opening for me just for music. I started getting calls from people. I started playing more and more at the Bible college I went to. And then all over Southern California, all these churches just started hearing about me because of their friends would tell them, hey, there's this guy named Jeremy Camp. He plays music. He's a young, guy who loves Jesus. And, you might want to use him at your service. And so I started playing and literally, like, someone took me under my wing, and his name was Jean-Luc, and he just poured into me. He saw a gift in me, and he poured into me. And talking about mentorship and how huge that is to lead someone along in their path and their desires and their dreams, that's what he did. He saw a gift in me, and it was incredible. And so for me, kind of that's what got me started into music, and the doors were opening for me. And then, of course, Adrienne, tell your story. So this is another crazy story.
So I was born and raised in South Africa, in Port Elizabeth, the very, very bottom of the African continent. And all my life, since I can remember being 6 or 7 years old, I loved music and I wanted to sing. But also grew up in a very small town, had no idea how that would even ever happen. But just took lots of opportunities, often sang on, worship teams at church. And then when I was 17 years old, I got invited to be a part of a band. And I joined them, and the band was called the Benjamin Gate. And we started doing different demos and writing songs. And we sent our demo to a recording studio in Nashville to be mastered. And they put our demo out to a record label. And it was this crazy scenario, but they basically just said, we want to sign you. I mean, it was the most crazy, bizarre thing. They said, we want to sign you, but the catch is that you have to leave South Africa and move over to America. And so, of course, we were just going, this has been our dream forever. I was 19 years old, packed my bags, said goodbye to my incredible family and my amazing country, and came over to America, hit the road, toured in a van and trailer for 2.5 years, and then I met this guy.
Come on!
And I decided he was worth sticking around for.
It's crazy how, and we've spoken a lot about this when we're talking about the idea of pursuing your ambitions and your dreams. Sometimes it just becomes possible to wake up to the opportunities that are around you.
Right.
Jeremy, you had an opportunity and you said, instead of like, nah, there's somebody better than me or different than me, or 80, if you just decided like, nah, that's too far, too fast, too whatever thing. And then one ambition leads you to another opportunity.
Absolutely.
Isn't that crazy?
It's so true.
All of a sudden you guys are married. Isn't it 16 years later?
Yep.
Yeah. So
evidently it worked because I've seen the kids. So there's something really beautiful about that. Tell me about setbacks, though. Things happen along the way, because no doubt in music and life and everything, and you have some beautiful books, a movie that are out I want you to talk about. But what are some of the setbacks along the way where you've had to learn patience in going after your ambitions?
Yeah. For me, as things started kind of opening up, and I saw the doors open and God was just doing incredible things, and I was just walking through them. I was like, okay, and I was going, every opportunity I had, I would take. You know what I mean? It wasn't like, no, that's not big enough, or I need to play something. It wasn't that. It was like, I played at bar mitzvahs, I played at birthday parties, I did whatever, weddings, anything. I sang Butterfly Kisses at a wedding. So, so at that point, I'm willing to do anything. And so anything. But with that, life still happens. As you're pursuing things and doors are opening up, life happens. And one of my big stories in my testimony is during that, before I even met Adrienne, as I was pursuing music, I met this woman named Melissa. And I was still doing music. We fell in love, and we found out that she had cancer. And so there was a major life setback where I didn't know at that point music wasn't even a thing, because all I cared about was taking care of her. And we got married, and 3.5 months into our marriage, she went to be with the Lord, and she died of cancer. And so, talk about a major setback. It really was like, I remember being at a point in my life just going, I don't even want to play music. I don't want to do anything. I don't even want to talk about the Lord right now, because right now I'm just upset. I'm just being honest with the Lord. And what happened though is I just felt his comfort, and I felt his peace, and him saying, I'm going to take care of you. Just go be a voice, and I'm going to speak through you. And I remember going out and sharing, and I remember just God using that in such a radical way in the midst of just going, I don't want to do this because it hurts too bad. He said, go, I'll be with you wherever you go. And I would open my mouth, and I felt like God's power and God's spirit would move in a radical way, and I would see lives being transformed. And so because of that, stepping into something where I didn't feel like anymore, I was like, you know what, this is a setback. I actually would rather just get a job, not worry about singing songs anymore, because that feels like it's too much of a tie to things that I don't want to talk about. And God said, no, I want you to. And now, of course, God opened up doors and doors. That's when I got signed to a record company. That's when I met her. And there's a lot more to that story, but it was basically saying when life happens and there's something that's even tragic, that don't stop.
Yeah.
Because God can use that tragedy for something beautiful.
Yeah, well, I kind of want to pull over to a wide spot in the road about that, because people that are listening, they've had setbacks, and they're different ones than yours, but pain is pain is pain, and loss and grief and all that. And so what I want to do, though, is to explore then the agreements that we make with ourselves. Like if you made the agreement with yourself, I will never love again. I will never risk again because that was just too painful. I'm out. I know a lot of people listening have had a setback, and I guess I want to revisit some of those agreements that we made, because had you stuck with perhaps a bad agreement, you would have missed out on something beautiful that God had for you. How did you two navigate that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think in it, I mean, you're so right. I think we say these things to ourselves in moments of pain, which it's completely understandable. But I think one thing that really touched me about Jeremy and Melissa's story is both of them, while, Melissa's 21 years old and staring death in the face. But in that moment, she had a choice as to whether or not she was going to let it completely corrupt her and make her bitter, or just choose to trust God in the moment, And I know that not everybody necessarily walks a Christian lifestyle, has, faith in God and all of that stuff. But for her, that was the anchor that pulled her through and that she clung to, was to get through that. And I think even Jeremy in that moment, when watching his wife suffer and then, pass away, it was like he had that choice to make in that moment of whether or not to keep going and just going, am I going to let this absolutely corrupt me and allow bitterness and resentment and hardness to come in? Or am I going to, even in the midst of pain, take a step forward? And I think those are such decisive moments in life, because as you said, it's like pain is universal. Every single one of us go through that. And depending on how we handle those moments, it's not saying, hey, this doesn't hurt, or hey, this wasn't the worst thing could have possibly happened. It's acknowledging those things, but going, I'm still going to step forward even when it hurts, and even amidst the pain of taking that step forward, and not just letting it absolutely destroy us.
Yeah.
And part of that is to just get real about it. I'm a pretty upbeat person. You two are really upbeat. And so sometimes I find myself being a little disingenuous, because I'm not trying to pretend about how I'm feeling. I just don't want to bum you out. So I'll act differently than I am, and we become a caricature of who we really are. And instead of the authenticity of just saying, man, I'm hurting right now. I know I won't always be there, but I just kind of need to settle into that. And I know for some people, they're in the midst of a lot of hurt. Something happened directly to them, indirectly to them, and they're just feeling that. I just want people to be reminded that that is not just okay, but that is where the learning becomes. I think, wouldn't you say that a lot of your relationship has been shaped, your music, all of your different expressions of love in the world have been shaped by actually getting real with the pain that you've experienced?
That's exactly right. And if we wouldn't have pressed through that, or if I wouldn't have pressed through that, then we wouldn't have been together. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so because we've navigated understanding, walking, together, this dream of going, okay, God, use this to reach the world. Now, we've been able to do a movie on my life, sharing my story. And that's a whole story in itself, which, we don't have a lot of time, but that's a whole story in itself. And because of all that and pressing towards and not saying I give up, now it's in millions of people's lives around the world. It's been going to be in 88 countries or something like that. Yeah. 88 countries.
Yeah, tell us about the movie. What's the name? It was released this year.
Yeah. Talk about having to have a dream and then all of a sudden you feel like it was kind of shattered. Let me share that real quick. So
yes, come on.
2 years ago, or a little over 2 years ago, I got asked to do a movie on my life. And this was an ongoing thing for years, but just wasn't the right timing. When I wrote a book, we had this, these conversations, and all of a sudden it became this like, wow, really, a movie on my life? This is crazy. Who gets a movie on their life? Well, that was kind of shelved, and it was kind of disappointing because we felt like that the doors were opening and it got closed. Well, it got opened back up a few years ago. And so blood, sweat, and tears, we, Lionsgate, a major motion picture studio, picks up this movie. The Irwin brothers do the movie, and we're just,
I love those guys.
Shania Twain is my mom, and Gary Sinise, Lieutenant Dan's my dad, all these incredible things, and you're going, God, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward. So everything's going great. The movie's coming out March 13th of this year. So the day that the movie came out, the president declared a global pandemic. And talk about a dream feeling like it got shattered. All of a sudden, these theaters started closing down after the first weekend. And we had the first day it came out, it was the #1 movie in America the first day it came out on Friday. And so you're going, it's almost like that, yes, no, where are you going with this?
Isn't it crazy?
What?
Yeah.
But, honestly, here we are, it's a few months later. It's now, people were cooped up because of COVID. And we've heard story after story of saying, I may have not watched this movie in the theaters, but we're home and all of a sudden I watch this movie and what it did in my heart, it transformed my life. And so our idea of what we think is the best result for something could be completely different from God's idea. And his idea is always better. Even though it may hurt and you feel like you have to pivot and go, I had a dream and it was coming to fruition and it got squashed. You have to say, okay, God, I don't understand this, but I'm going to actually move forward. And now we're able to hear stories and just rejoice with what God's doing. So
it gives a new definition of a movie release. You actually have to release
Absolutely.
everything that you thought.
I know.
You're standing in the end zone. You think everybody's cheering, then you go like wrong end zone. But one of the things that happens, I think this just makes you even more relatable as individuals, as a couple, because if everything goes great and then you stumble into the next thing, that goes awesome, the next thing, that just is an unbelievable life.
Yeah.
That it actually, our lives are marked with these ups and downs and turns and unexpected, but it's kind of like what you do when that happens. What did you find, Adie, when you found out there wasn't going to be, after all of this hard work, and people watch the movie, you will cry. I'm emotionally incontinent. I cried like a baby.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
I think for me personally, obviously the movie is about Jeremy and his first wife, Melissa. And so there was so much emotional, there was a cost for us, to in a sense, go back 20 years, relive so much pain and heartache, and then just all the dynamics of all of that stuff. And so going through the movie, as beautiful and as exciting as it was, there was such a cost to it personally. And so I think, if I can just be transparent, the in a sense promised success of the movie felt like a redemptive thing for us. Like, okay, this is worth it because, millions of people are going to see it. And so when all of a sudden everything gets shut down, it was sort of like, back up a little bit. And just, I think for us, we really had to stop and just go, okay, what's our heart behind this? Do we really want to have an impact in the world? And then if we want to have an impact in the world, we don't get to specify exactly how that's going to happen. Yeah. I heard recently somebody had said, if you, when you're going into town, if you wait for every single light to turn green, you're never going to take the trip. You'll stay at home forever. And I just thought that's so good. We have sometimes these ideas of how things are going to pan out, and not every light is going to be green. For us, it's like we came across a massive roadblock, and it was just like, okay, God, what is the reroute us right now? Like, just give us your perspective on what's happening. And what we found was that, especially in the midst of a global pandemic, to have the message of, I have no idea what's going on. I don't understand this right now, but I'm still going to choose to trust. And I'm still going to choose to believe. Like, that was something we were having to live out again while alongside everybody else going, this is hard, but we're going to choose to have a godly perspective and just think about having an impact,
Yeah. I think that's something in there for all of us. The one thing that we have in common, we have ambitions. Another thing we have in common is their setbacks.
Totally.
And I'm not, I feel like my faith is really kind of meat and potatoes. Like, I don't think God drops like ladybugs on my nose to send me the message. I think he'll drop a piano on me if he wants my attention. But things happen, and we get to decide whether to continue to show up. And my hope is that the people listening would find their way back to their ambition, this ambition that they maybe parked for a while. They felt like things didn't line up the way they hoped.
Yeah.
They hear a message like yours and say, maybe I'm going to dust that off and give that another try. You probably don't remember this, Jeremy, but the first time we met, there was going to be almost like the recreation of Woodstock all over again in Canada. There was a woman that had a big farm. There was going to be hundreds of thousands of people there. Remember all that?
I do remember that.
You had so much trouble getting a mixing board over the thing. By the time it all happened, we arrived, and there was like 5 people, and that's because the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit were there. But mercifully, when I asked them how long you want me to talk for, they said 3 minutes. I'm like, how about 2? But one of the things that happened, I don't feel like that was God sending me a message that he doesn't want me to communicate to people anymore. I think it was probably a big plan that didn't work out the way they were hoping. And you know the beautiful thing? I've kept track of that. That woman has continued to put on the concert. There was like 3 or 4 people that showed up. She had lost her husband. He had taken his life. She wanted to have a big gathering where people would get in touch with what their ambitions were and to push through some difficult things. She was undaunted. She had a field that could have fit 100,000 people. Nobody showed up, and she did it again.
I love that.
And I think I want us to be, that's not just resilience, it's knowing what you want, why you want it, and deciding what you're going to do.
Absolutely.
And you guys decided that. You decided that for your families. What are the things that you want together as a couple now? Kind of bring us current. What are the things that are kind of at the top of your list as you're growing and raising a family? And
I think a big thing right now is we want to do more things together as a couple. Because, of course, I've had, in a sense, my career, and she's, of course, always been alongside me. But I think we wrote a book together called In Unison. And it's kind of a marriage book, sharing our story, sharing, the things that we've learned. And not that I think the biggest, misconception is that you write a marriage book because you have it all together. That's not true. We wrote a marriage book because we realized we don't have it all together, and we want to share the things that we've learned. You know what I mean? And so I think that's one of the things that I've, intensely learned is that, there's a lot of learning still to be done. And so we want to learn continuously together, but we want to do more things together. And so the book is a big part of that, In Unison. Honestly, just sharing our story and sharing how, like you said, how sometimes there's setbacks in life and sometimes there's hardships. But if you stop and you don't continue to press on through those things, you wouldn't be in a place where we're able to go now around the world and share of what God has done and share how he's opened up these doors, literally worldwide. But together is just, we don't know what that looks like, but we want to do more things as a couple, doing conferences, do whatever it may be. We just want to take people along the journey as well. I want to, with my wife, mentor people, pour into people, like people did to me, and to help the next generation get up and go and do what God's called them to do.
Well, and I think,
I love that you're looking forward to.
Totally.
80?
I was just going to say, I think that, a lot of times we sort of think we have to have it all together in order to step out.
Right.
And we're just going, hey, we're somewhere along this journey and we're just going to go for it anyway. And there will be times we totally make mistakes.
Yeah.
There's going to be times we're going to have to go, oh man, I blew it. I'm so sorry. I'm still learning. But don't, I think for us, we want to encourage people just going, even with the marriage book we wrote, we've only been married for 16 years. Bob, you've been married for much longer than we have, you know what I mean? And so it's this sort of like common misconception to have all these accolades and things behind your name in order to step out and share your stories with others. And it's like, let's just do this together. We're going to be transparent along our journey. And just like Jeremy said, just grab the hold of the people next to us and go, come on, let's do this,
Yeah, that's something that I hope people will resonate with it. They'll just have this ambition. They'll say, well, I haven't mastered it yet. I'm like, perfect.
Exactly.
Amen.
Welcome to the party.
It's great. And don't you dare, if you are listening, keep waiting for permission.
No.
You are here.
That's right.
Your ambition has been put in your heart. Go for it. Unless your ambition is to knock off liquor stores, I would... find a way to express this love that God's given you in a bunch of beautiful ways and go with what you got and the stories that you've been given. You too have been given a beautiful story.
Thank you.
You're telling your stories not only in books, in movies, but also in songs. Would you be up for playing a song or two for us? Would that be okay?
I would love to.
I think a lot of people would love to hear from you, hear your heart. Come on.
I'd love to.
Jeremy can.
So I want to actually play, if I could, this is a song called I Still Believe. And, it's pretty, I think, honestly, for today and what's happening, it's pretty relevant. Just saying the verses, I wrote this 2 weeks after my wife went to be with Jesus. And it was that, scattered words, empty thoughts seem to pour from my heart. I've never felt so torn before. Seems I don't know where to start. And that's how sometimes I think that we're feeling. And I think right now a lot of people are kind of like, I don't know where to start. I don't know what to even think right now. The second verse says, though the questions still fog up my mind, the promises I still seem to bear, even when answers slowly unwind, it's my heart I see you prepare. So it's going, but you know what? No matter what, I still believe. I still believe in your faithfulness and your truth and your word. Even when I can't see, I still believe. So
you guys, thank you so much.
Yes.
I hope if you're listening, you'll take some of these words to heart, walking by faith, just saying, God, I am going to trust you. Even if faith is a new thing or feels far away, to just say, man, I am going to do the next best thing. I'm just going to move forward. And if this thing about God is for real, then I'm just going to trust that he's going to bust through history again and make that real. I'm grateful for you guys. Thank you so much for loving people, for loving Team Goff well.
Yeah.
And looking forward to lots of mischief ahead.
Yes.
Amen.
We love you, Bob.
Love you, buddy. Thank you so much,
Love
man.
you guys too. Aren't the camps awesome? I could listen to them play music all day long, but even more important, I've got to know them as friends. And the crazy thing that is actually predictable about them, they're the same people on the surface that they are 30 feet down. That's what I want for you and I. It involves authenticity. Just talk about what went right, what went wrong, what you're certain about, what you're guessing about. That's the stuff that will free you up to pursue your ambitions. Because if we're busy tending to a kind of a caricature of ourselves, of who everybody else thinks we are, we'll never get to really become who God wants us to be. And so I hope that this evening, it's been a great time to reflect on these things. I don't think what we need is information. What we need is a couple examples. And these are examples to me. People with courage, people like Grace, filled with grace. People like the camps, like filled with tenacity to continue forward and encounter some setbacks, keep it real, and move forward to the next thing. A voice like Dawn's in my life that has talked about the things that are real, the things that matter, the things that you're longing for. My question to you is this: what is it that you want? And then, why do you want it? Check that out, vet that thing, make sure it's worth it. But most important, decide what you're going to do about it. Put down all the to-do lists, and let's get something on the done list. Let's say this is an ambition, and I'm going to shuffle my feet forward, knowing that heaven is leaning over the rails, hoping you'll take the next courageous step. I hope you will, and we're along for the journey with you. I have a tradition in every book I've written. It's to leave my cell phone number. If you're feeling stuck, you can give me a call. If you're feeling alone, you can give me a call, because you are part of a worldwide family of friends. People that are cheering for you, cheering you on. They just want you to make a move. And you know what? You're going to hit a couple setbacks along the way. It's going to happen. This is not a sign from God, most likely. What it is a little resistance. Push through it. Your ambitions are worth this thing. Let's go do this thing, knowing that the God of heaven has his wind at your back and wants to see you bring his kind of joy and peace and that example of go for it into the world. And take the time you need to just be quiet in this. It isn't about a bunch of activity. There's a great verse in the Song of Songs, and it says this: "My beloved is mine, and I am his." Isn't that beautiful? Boys, you're thinking about your ambitions. Just know his ambition for you is this: he just wants you to be his, and he wants him to be yours. So don't overcomplicate this thing. Take the next step, you guys. Keep dreaming big. So long.